What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for listening. I wanted to put this in the top of the show. Make sure you subscribe on Patreon, patreon.com/Brennan Tassif. Check out the merch store at brennantcomedy.com to get your ex-drinking buddy merch. Subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. As always, we're coming to you live from Gotham Production Studios, and I hope you enjoy the episode.
Grab me a beer and grab me a coke. We bout to sit for an hour, bullshit and tell jokes. And please don't mix it up, cause he done sobered up. Brennan T Comedy on your social media feeds. And Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. I'm your host, Brennan Tassif. If you're new to the show, quick rundown of the program. I used to be everyone's favorite drinking buddy. Used to be my favorite thing to do. Hang out with friends, get drunk, do drugs, get in all sorts of trouble, and then reminisce about those crazy stories. I am sober now, but that is still one of my favorite things to do. Reminisce about the crazy old days. Most weeks I'll be joined by a guest. This week is no exception. All the way from New York City, Anna Koppelman.
Hello, it's so exciting to be here.
What's up?
Not much. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm so excited you came on. We were able to get this done.
I know. I had been when I first heard about the podcast and I heard you had asked Eric Walsh and he had said no.
Oh, he's going to get excited. He always listens to the first half because we talk about comedy. And now Eric Walsh.
Eric Walsh. And I was like, okay, I'll know that I'm really part of this whole group once I'm asked.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I find it so odd because there's certain people I ask just because like some of the stuff they talk about on stage, I'm like, oh, they'd be perfect for the show. And then there's other people that I ask just, obviously like comics that I know from the stand and the cellar and stuff just because they have podcasts and stuff. And then there are other, like this happened with Carly too, where I didn't even kind of like think of it because she doesn't talk about like crazy stuff on stage.
Yeah, of course.
And then one day I was like, wait, you should come on. And then I've been so much better about like asking just everybody that I would want to have on.
Well, once I saw Carly was on, I was like, there's a pathway for me.
Yeah. Like it's a legitimate show or something?
No, like I feel like Carly and I both corner the quirky girl open mic market.
Yeah.
So,
you guys have that in the bag.
Yeah, we really do.
So let's talk about it. You're not originally from New York, correct?
No, I grew up here.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Where at?
Upper West Side.
Oh.
I know. Yeah.
Hey-o. All right. Well, that's cool. So let's talk about it because most of my guests are transplants.
Yeah.
But you grew up here. I'm assuming we were joking around about it before the mics went on, but you just graduated from college. Did you go to college up here?
No. So I went to college in California, but I had lived in New York up until then. Okay.
So I always like, especially since it's your first time on the show, I want the listeners to get to know you, how you got into comedy, stand-up especially, and all that other stuff. So when did you first start doing open mics?
I've done a lot of like improv and that kind of
It's always improv.
I know.
It's always the path.
Unfortunately, it is the gateway.
When did you start doing improv?
I had really bad like social anxiety when I was in high school.
Okay.
And for some reason, somebody said to my parents, like, you should sign her up for improv classes.
Yeah, because the one thing about social anxiety is put them in a setting with a lot of people watching them.
Yeah, put them on stage.
Yeah.
They're like, if you can figure out how to talk on stage, you could be able to talk to people one-on-one. So yeah, I think that's the wrong order, but okay.
Yeah, that's not how it normally goes, but
that's what got me doing it. And then I was like, oh, I can kind of make people laugh. And
so were you scared the first time, like when your parents came to you and said, hey, we're signing you up for improv?
Well, I was obsessed with comedy. So I was like, but I was also scared of everything all of the time.
Yeah,
so it wasn't like there was anything different about that day. I was just like, more to panic
now
about.
It's just something another thing I'm scared about.
Yeah, add it to the list. But I didn't think anyone would bully me in an improv class. And I was right. I think everyone was right about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
See, that's the problem is I played sports my whole life and they are relentless.
Yeah.
I got bullied all the time. And I was like, but I'm on the team. And they're like, we don't care.
No, that's
You're
like
still
what
a piece
being
of
friends
shit.
with girls is like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen Mean Girls. We've all seen Mean Girls.
So
when you say you were obsessed with comedy, when did you get into like comedy as art form, I guess? Like were you always into shows or movies or stand-up itself, or like what did you like about comedy?
I feel like I'm gonna give a very basic answer, but I just would grow up watching a ton of SNL all the time, and like my first like real crush was on Andy Samberg.
Really?
I was like, I just need to go to where that kind of guy is,
Yeah.
which is a disaster. But
They're all a disaster.
They're all a disaster.
We know some Andy Samberg types, and they're all a disaster of people.
I'm already blushing. But yeah, I've just always loved comedy. And then I think that I was like a very weird kid in a lot of ways. And so like the way that I would.
Did you do theater and stuff in school?
No, I was too weird for the theater kids.
Wow.
I know.
That's weird.
It's weird. Yeah. I had an eye patch as a kid.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Tell that story.
Well, so as a kid, my eyes were crossed, and so then to like fix it.
Oh yeah, you talked about this on stage.
Yeah.
I forgot. So
yeah, so I was like a kid with an eye patch, and then I also have dyslexia, so I couldn't read.
When
so, it was just like it was unfortunate.
When did you get the eye patch?
When I was 6.
Okay.
And then I just had it for a while, and then
That's
I
what
had
I was
eye
gonna
surgery. Ask. Yeah, I might have been younger than 6 with the eye patch actually. It was.
Did you like have a bedazzled one where you would like do like different things, or was it just a basic black eye patch?
My mom was very good at finding like brightly colored eye patches with like
well,
little
there's
like,
that,
hearts on them, and
there's that congressman who has an eye patch, and he wears like almost like a Kano from Mortal Kombat. Like it's not like an actual whole patch; it's just like a little thing he shoves in his eye. So it looks like cool as shit. He looks like a video game character. Dan Crenshaw. Yeah, that's the guy's name. But
no, mine was a lot more innocent. But it's the one good thing about it is I can still like guilt my parents just by going like this.
Oh, really?
Like, if I
there
want
you go.
something, I can just.
Remember when I wore an eye patch?
Remember when I was that weird?
Remember? So
I had an eye patch, and I was like.
When did you get the surgery?
Also in 1st grade.
Okay.
And then I also couldn't like read. I had no depth perception also.
Yeah, because that comes from both eyes.
Yeah. And so sports was never going to happen for me. And socializing was weird because everyone else was like ahead of me, and then I didn't know how to talk to them. And then my parents switched me to a school for kids with disabilities, but then I was like the smartest one there.
Yeah.
So then that was also weird. So then I just went back to, I was just like.
So you went back and forth, so then you went back to regular school?
Yeah. So then it was just like.
Sorry, not regular.
No,
that's not the word.
Smart people school.
Yeah, okay.
So I was just strange. Then I would just make myself laugh.
Okay.
And then I would make like my brother laugh, and then that was I started doing improv, and
So you started improv in high school.
Yeah.
Was it a class through the high school, or was it an actual troupe?
So one of the great things about growing up in New York is I just like signed up for like an improv 101 class.
Oh, wow.
At like the Magnet.
But you're like, how old at this point?
I was like 15.
That's crazy.
Yeah, 14.
Yeah, a lot of times what happens is, and I've talked about this before with other guests, is there are certain people who know that they want to do comedy. So obviously they either start doing open mics at 18 or 21 or whatever it is. Then there's other people like, well, in your case where you're like, oh no, this is something I'm going to do. So you start at 15.
Yeah.
Was that intimidating?
Honestly, like it was, again, like I was just, I think, afraid of a lot of things. So then everything wasn't free.
Yeah.
You know, like.
Because that feeling came with everything. So
then
it wasn't.
Like, and everyone was so nice to me because like, and I get it now that I'm like the age that those kids like I hung out with a lot of like 23-year-olds, 24-year-olds, 25-year-olds taking like their first improv class, and they were all so sweet to me, which I would obviously be to like a 14-year-old being like, I'm obsessed with comedy.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh my God, I'm so cool. I'm hanging out with a 23-year-old. Like, this is sick.
I'm the coolest 14-year-old in the
I'm like,
planet.
everyone at school doesn't like me, but that's because they don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you enjoy the improv, like the class, when you first started, were you like, oh, this is awesome?
Yeah, I was obsessed with it. And then I was just like all I wanted to do all the time. And then I went to college, and
Where did you go to college?
I went to like a really small school outside of LA.
Okay.
That like nobody's heard of.
What's it?
It's called Pitzer. It's like,
yeah, you're right.
Nobody's heard of it. But
Is it a private school?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it like a special, does it, because you know a lot of those smaller private schools are like liberal arts schools.
Oh
or
yeah,
like
it's a liberal arts school, and it's like connected to all these other liberal arts schools, and it's like very obnoxious. And, like,
that sounds like very obnoxious kind of behavior.
Yeah, a lot of talking about a lot of theory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What if? A lot of what ifs.
So much what if. So many opinions.
Yeah.
All the time. And not to brag, but I was the president of one of the improv troupes.
Okay.
Campus. Yeah.
So when you go to college, you decide to keep doing improv, obviously.
Yeah, I'm like, this is my thing.
Yeah.
And then I found out that other people didn't think it was as like cool and sexy as I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
Yeah. But
some people almost who just talk a lot of shit about improv. almost like it's
Which I get.
secondary to stand up, and those people are just the worst.
Oh, well, I no longer do improv. Let's be clear about that.
No, but it's interesting because I actually liked improv when I was younger.
Did you do it?
And then I had never done it, but I liked the idea and whose line is it anyway and stuff like that. And then it's interesting, as I got more into stand-up and I heard other stand-ups talking shit about it, obviously in true social anxiety fashion, I just mimicked what they would say. So I was like, yeah, forget improv. That sucks. And then over time, I started to believe that because I would say it all the time. And then now I just don't
like improv. I still think that like watching really good improv is like the most incredible, mind-blowing thing.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, how did they do that? But I wasn't that good at improv. And
even though you were the president.
I was the president because out of everyone on the improv troupe, like I could keep track of time.
Yeah.
But I was like...
The only reason I was the president was because I could use the phone, the time function on my phone.
No, literally, I was a horrible president because everyone would be like goofing off and I'd be like, hey, we have a show to prepare for. Stop playing games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But isn't all improv just games?
I know. Like it was very narc behavior on my part.
You wanted to keep a tight ship. I do the same thing when I run shows or mics or something like that. I'm like, we're not fucking around here. Like 5 minutes, 4 minutes, you get the light, like in and out, in and out, in and out.
And in stand-up, I can just be like, okay, I'm going to work really hard at this, even though it's like a silly, goofy thing.
Yeah.
And no, like, I think that that's rewarded more.
I think it absolutely is.
Yeah.
So when did you decide to pivot into stand-up?
I had always wanted to do it, but I was like intimidated by it. And then I had a really bad breakup, got expelled from clown school as which is its whole own thing. And
so
then
before we get too far into like the drinking and drug and party stories and stuff, tell the story to the listeners about clown school, how that even happened. And I know it's a bit, so you don't have to burn the bit, but the actual story, like what happened?
The actual story is like my senior year of college started dating this guy. I was very in love with him. He was French and like he was on the rival improv troupe, so it was very Romeo and Juliet.
Forbidden love. Star-crossed lovers.
Exactly. And we were dating, and at the end of college, he was like, I really want to go to clown school.
So he's talking about clown school in Europe.
Yeah, in Paris.
Because we've had a guest on, Rafael Pariah, who directed my one-man show, who also went to clown school in Paris. And when I heard clown school, I thought it was a joke. Like, I thought it was like, you know how, I mean, you don't know because you're much younger than me, but back in like the 90s, people would be like, oh, where are you going to go to college? Clown school? Like, it was
literally.
like it was like a thing.
Yeah.
But this person, your ex, actually wanted to go to Paris to study clown school.
The art of clown.
Yeah, the clowning.
And the thing that I say in the bit is that he was like, I want to go to clown school. I have this lifelong dream of going to clown school, which was his way of saying, I want to break up with you. And I was like, no way, that's crazy. I also now really want to go to clown school. It's my lifelong dream, which is my way of saying it's not going to be that easy.
Which is hilarious because you actually did that.
Oh, yeah, completely. And my friends were like, you're going to clown school? And I was like, yeah, for myself.
So you weren't trying to, you were trying to like hide it from everyone else that you were going there just for this boy.
Well, because I was like, I do care about comedy.
Yeah.
Maybe I knew.
That's true. Yeah, you do have the background of this is something you're obsessed with.
And it was something I was obsessed with. And I was in like just a really weird place and kind of directionless. And I was like.
What did you major in?
English.
Okay. So
yeah.
Directionless makes sense.
Yeah. And then, I followed him. And clown school is like very intense, which also sounds crazy. But like the way it would run is there was just like this very old clown and he just had a drum in his lap and he would like tell you to get on stage and do something. And then if he didn't like it, he would like ruthlessly insult you.
This might have been the same clown school that Rafi went
was.
to.
Yeah.
It's like a renowned one.
Yeah.
Do you remember what's the name?
Gaulier.
Okay.
I don't know.
I love how I asked you what the name was. Like I'd be like, oh yeah, totally, that's it.
Yeah.
But I have no idea.
But no, he would just be like really mean.
Yeah.
And which I'm totally, I think there's like a point in if you're going to perform, you need to be okay to withstand people insulting you. And sometimes it would be like totally fine. He'd be like, okay, bargain, goodbye, which is like funny. But then sometimes he'd be like, that was so bad. It seemed like you were raped as a child and never got over it.
This is definitely the same school.
Yeah.
Because Rafi had some examples like that too.
Yeah. And then basically like the whole story short is that one day he said something and I spoke back to it. And then
Which you're not supposed to do.
No.
So do you remember what he said?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to forget that.
He was like, this scene is so bad. Which death camp in Poland should we send them to? And then he pointed at a German student and was like, you're German, which one?
What did the German student say?
The German student said Dachau.
Oh, so he was
ready. He was like, oh, yeah, which one? Okay, I will I've been thinking all day.
I've been thinking about this all day.
And Dachau. And then, yeah.
Then what'd you say?
Well, in the moment, I was thinking about all the bitches I went to Hebrew school with.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's hard because I'm Jewish, but I'm not like super. There's nothing more cringeworthy than like defending anti-Semitism. It's like so passe. And and I just was like, I don't want to have to say anything. But then I started thinking about like my parents and like my lineage or whatever. And then I was like, even though I didn't really like anyone I went to Hebrew school with, like in the death camps, we were all part of the same oven clique. Like I can't not say anything. And then class ended and my boyfriend.
So you didn't say anything at the time?
No. And then my boyfriend was like.
Still your boyfriend.
Still my boyfriend. That. Yeah. But
Love
we were fighting because clown school brings up a lot of problems in relationships.
I could imagine. You can imagine. Especially when you go there not actually wanting to go to clown school.
Exactly. And I was like, I need to say something. And my boyfriend was like, you absolutely cannot say anything.
Yeah.
He knew. He was like, if you say something, you'll get expelled. And I was like, easy for you to say, you Christian,
Yeah.
And then we were looking at the train tracks, and I just started thinking about all the kids
God.
on train tracks. And then I did the super mature thing of sending that I honestly think I was taught in Hebrew school, which was I sent a very passive-aggressive text message.
Okay. To the professor or teacher?
To the German student.
Oh, to the German student. Okay.
And then I'm pretty sure the German student reported me for bullying him.
Aww.
And then the next day...
Isn't that ironic?
I know. He was very upset. He was like, just because my grandparents were Austrian and German and
Nazis.
Participated in the war does not mean that they were Nazis. And it was like...
No, that's exactly what that
it
means.
He was like, if they didn't... But anyway.
That's kind of exactly what that means.
Yeah, it was like definitionally, I think... I had a few problems with it. Mainly, I don't think Dachau was the funniest choice.
Okay.
Like Treblanka, much better word.
Much better.
Much better. Anyway, the next day I got to class and the clown master was like, who here sent the German student a mean letter? And I don't know why I was expecting somebody else in the class to raise their hand.
Yeah, to take the rap for you.
But it was incredibly silent. And I was like...
Were you planning on being like, oh, it was me? Or were you, in the moment when he first asked, are you thinking like, I'm just not going to say anything?
Well, my first thought was like, who wrote the German student a mean letter? And then...
Because you sent a text.
And then I was like, oh, that's me.
Yeah.
We're all talking about me.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, I did. And then he started going on this like weird rant about fascism and...
Which again, the Germans would be very aware of.
Yeah, exactly. He was like, he asked his assistant, are you a fascist? And his assistant was like, I'm not, but I could be. And I was like, what is happening? And then I tried to clarify. And he basically was like, if you want to talk, you have to get onto the stage.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So then he pulled me onto the stage. And I do think it's important. Like, it's not like I was a star student. Like, I was exceptionally bad at clown school. And, like, up until this point, I was so shy. Like, I would fail every activity. Like, he'd be like, go practice. Like he'd be like, you are an egg. Be an egg. And then he'd be like, I'm not convinced you seem like an egg. And it's like, because I'm not. Like, I'm not. I don't. And then he started, like, lecturing me and was like, you do not love people. Like, I need people here who love people. And then something like hit and I just became the sassiest I've ever been.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, do you love people? Because it doesn't seem like you love people. And then he was like, I'm kicking you out of my school. You can't talk to me like that. And I was like, well.
What a very sensitive baby.
Yeah. And I was like, well, since I'm already being kicked out, I think I can say whatever I want. And then.
Then you just went in? And
then I went in. And then I was like, he was like, never come back. And I was like, don't worry, I won't.
Yeah, but that's not the plan.
That's not the plan. And then I left. And his assistant followed me out and was like, you have to understand, Philippe is not God, but he's one step away. And I was like, I'm leaving. And so then my boyfriend and I broke up. The next day, weirdly, my grandfather died.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
And then I came home, and then I was like, I don't have a job. I've just been expelled from clown school. My grandpa died. I have no friends really in New York. I should start stand-up. I've hit my rock bottom.
That's always how it works. People are like, I have nothing left to live for. Maybe I'll try stand-up.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, no, this is what I now have to live for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you tried it, do you remember the first open mic you went to?
I think it was Greenwich Village.
Okay. And how did it go?
I mean, now looking back on it, horribly probably. But
Yeah.
at the time in my head, I was like, I made Drew laugh.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's always it's weird because sometimes Drew will laugh. No one else will laugh, and then Drew will laugh, and I go, wait, is that a bit or is he being sarcastic?
I know, but I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
And I was coming off of the high of having, not to brag, the best eulogy at my grandpa's funeral.
You crushed it.
I crushed it, and everyone said it.
Standing O.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was a laugh break, an applause break. It was
Wow.
Because I started off the speech, I said I truly thought the biggest tragedy of this week was going to be me getting expelled from clown school, and I wish it was.
Boom. Laugh.
And then, and my poor brother worked so hard on his speech.
But sometimes people just aren't as good.
Sometimes you're a better sibling.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why you were Pop's favorite.
I wasn't.
Oh, you weren't?
I don't think I was. Like, I know the rankings that I definitely wasn't. But
yeah.
At the funeral, I showed.
You shined through.
Yeah, I shined through.
So then when you started doing stand-up, did you have it in your head that you weren't going to go back to improv? Or have you... I mean, that wasn't too long ago, so have you thought about going back to improv since?
No, I don't think so, because I love stand-up. And I love being able to write and plan my jokes and, like, think things through. And I really enjoy, like, the people that I've met. And I'm just, like, addicted to it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk, before you came on the show when we were talking at the mic, I asked you to come on, and you said, well, I don't really have that many stories because this one thing happened, and then I haven't really drank since as much as like some of the other people I've had on the show. And I was like, well, we can make that work.
Yes.
Because you said it was a pretty terrible experience. But before we get into that, so you didn't party a lot in college, I take it?
I didn't because I grew up around a lot of addicts.
Okay.
And so there was like a lot of talk about like how easily your entire life could be ruined.
How I can just fall apart?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird how that happens.
It's weird how that happens.
You think because this is what my experience is I started going to AA meetings when I was like 21, 22.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, because I clearly had a problem. And it was so weird because I remember going to these meetings and like, oh, these people are insane. Like, there's no way this will ever happen to me. And then as I got older and would go back to meetings, I'd be like, oh, well, some of that stuff has happened to me, but not all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then I hit a point where I was like, oh, I'm the crazy person now in this group because I've done all these things. Like, I was at a mic the other day and SB, friend of the show, was talking about, she said just this bit she's working on. And in the bit, she says, you look like an addict who would sell their, like, parents' silverware or something like that. And it hit me because I used to always think that was such a trope. And then at one point in my life, I tried to sell like my dead aunt's silverware.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Luckily,
yeah,
none of it worked out. And thank God, because at the time I was just sick.
Right, of course.
And I was in my head and I was out of money and I was like, oh, well, I'm going to have to do this. And then like through a certain series of events that never came to pass. And I'm so grateful for that because now I'm like, what would I have done if I actually went through with that?
Yeah.
But the fact that I had like the mindset to be like, well, I guess I'm going to have to do this. And so it's so interesting because growing up around addicts, I'm sure you see the same kind of thing where it's like, oh, it can fall apart just like that.
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, when you were 21, you just thought like, I'm not actually like the other people in this room.
Yeah. Well, because that was the thing I started drinking, and the listeners know this, I started drinking really late in life, like late 17, early 18. And then I was still playing football and stuff, so I would just drink like maybe once a week, twice a week. And I would get out of control, but it was always like, oh, Brennan's crazy. It's fun. But then when I was in my early 20s, I was dating someone and it was long distance. And I remember I was in Daytona for the summer and I couldn't sleep because I was so worried that this person I was in this long distance relationship was cheating on me all the time and all this kind of stuff, which hindsight she was, but I couldn't sleep or anything because of my anxiety. So I would just start drinking to fall asleep.
Yeah.
And then I would wake up in the middle of the night and then I would keep drinking to fall back asleep. And then that's kind of when I crossed over into, oh, I'm an alcoholic now. Like I have
Yeah.
a serious problem.
Yeah.
So it was, but even then, I got back to college, that was during the summer. And then I get back to college and I wasn't playing football anymore and I couldn't stop drinking. So like I went to my first meeting at 21 because I was like, oh, there's an issue. This is a serious problem.
Right.
So then after that, it was, in and out, like going to meetings and then not, and then being like, oh, I'm fine. And then going to meetings. And then by the time I was 30, I was like, oh, I'm the guy. I'm the guy.
Yeah, I'm the one.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I have an uncle who has like a very severe drug problem. And then one of my mom's very close friends was like in and out of rehab my entire childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of my dad's really close friends, actually the summer before I went to college, OD'd and died.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And just like, then other people that my parents knew like in their 20s who were incredibly talented and incredibly successful. And then just like, my parents would be like, oh, yeah, like they got really addicted to cocaine and then it all went down, or they got really addicted. And so it just never made it seem like a fun, chill thing.
Yeah.
It was always like, oh, like, are we going to smoke? Okay, great. I'll throw it was like the pressure on what would happen if I did it always felt really looming. So it always just.
So you kind of grew up with that, like in the back of your mind where you were like, oh, this can lead to very deep, dark places. Yeah.
Like growing up, my parents were always just like, okay, do cocaine once, you'll lose everything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there was like no, and my
parents, wow.
Yeah, my parents were like very like kind, chill people, but like the one thing they were always like super, super scary about was drugs and drinking. And I now as like an adult know that my dad was 100% joking about this and also talking about cocaine, but I kind of conflated it to be everything.
Yeah.
But as a kid, he was always like, and by kid I mean like 12, whatever. Because growing up in New York City, people start doing crazy shit really early.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, you could just walk down the street and people are selling cocaine and heroin.
Yeah, like 12-year-olds going to clubs. Like, it's crazy.
That's nuts.
Yeah, and my dad was like, if you ever do any drugs, I will take everything away. I will lock you in your room, and the only thing you'll have to eat is Kraft cheese slipped under the door. Which, like, he couldn't do. But in my mind, I was like, okay.
Drugs
like,
are that bad.
Drugs are that bad, and that's what would happen. And so I just, like, didn't really, I was too terrified.
Yeah. So when your friends, we talked earlier about how you were anxious and you didn't have a ton of friends and stuff as far as social circles. But when people that you knew in school started doing drugs, were you like, oh my God, this is horrific?
I was scandalized.
Yeah.
I was like, not even in a judgmental way, because it was two things where I was just like, that's so sick and cool.
Yeah.
And I cannot believe they figured out how to do this thing. And also, like, I could never.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I think when I finally did get to college, I got to college and I had like never smoked weed, which is so lame when you're the kid from New York City.
Yeah.
To be like, what?
Oh, yeah, that's true. Because you show up in California and you're like, oh, no, I've never done any of this stuff.
And they're like, what's wrong with you? And the first week of college, like this girl who ended up being my best friend for a lot of college, like we had met each other before college at like some summer thing. And so we knew each other and we were hanging out. And she was like, let me get you high for the first time. And like super excited about it. And I was like, wow, I'm a big girl now. Like,
oh, so you did it?
Yeah. And she gave me like an entire joint. It was like my first time ever doing anything.
Wow.
And
take us through that. What was that experience like? Were you nervous before you did it? Were you like, did you plan it out? Was it a spur of the moment thing? Like, what happened?
You know, I think the number one reason I've never been able to be cool is that, like, in that moment, I'm like, holy shit, like, we're smoking weed, guys. Can you believe it? But I was just so excited to be included in something. Like, I just really wanted friends and really wanted to be, like, a part of a group.
So it was spur of the moment then? She was like, hey, let's get high. And you were like, okay. Or did you know about it for like a day?
I knew about it.
Okay.
I knew it was going to come up, and I was ready.
Yeah.
Well, the first time
practicing your speech in your head over and over.
Yeah. Oh my God. And then after, like, the next day I overheard her be like, yeah, it's always embarrassing when like somebody gets the joint wet.
Yeah.
And I like didn't even know that was a thing. And I was like, oh my God, this is like, I'm such a fool.
My life is over.
My life is over and everyone's going to hate me. But so I got high for the first time and I just felt so guilty because I was like, my parents are going to be so mad at me. I've ruined everything.
Did you think they were going to find out?
Well, early in the night, I thought they were going to find out. And then I was like, there's no way they're going to find out.
Yeah.
But I couldn't fall asleep because I was so anxious. And at 4 a.m., I call my dad.
Oh, no.
And he picks up and it's like 1 a.m. New York time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do you ever feel like you're growing up way too fast and life is like passing you by and you don't know who you are? And
Wait a second. It's flip-flopped. It would be like 4 a.m. New York time, 1 a.m.
you
your
know,
time.
you're totally right. Yeah.
So this is even worse.
So it's even worse.
than
I
what
wake
we
him up
have.
at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
This is even a worse conversation to be having.
Yes. I wake him up at 4 a.m. and I'm like, do you ever feel like life is passing you by?
What'd he say?
And he, like, there was just like a pause. And then he went, are you high?
So he knew.
Oh, of course. And
Yeah.
I was like, and I instantly started crying. And I was like, yeah, and I feel so guilty about it.
Did he try to calm you down, or was he like Kraft cheese from here on out?
He was like, oh, well, that's the thing. He just goes, oh, yeah, everyone smokes weed in college. What?
Oh, man.
My whole life?
Yeah, you
No.
were traumatized by what he said, and then all of a sudden he was like, yeah, it's fine.
He was like, yeah, I smoked weed all the time in college, and then I kind of stopped because it made me depressed, but it's like not a big deal. You're fine.
Wow. That is a far cry from what he said before.
Yeah, but then he was like, but if it's cocaine, it's craft.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, and so, but then after that, I was just, I was in this like really weird, very fast friend group, and
You can always make more friends doing bad stuff than you can doing good stuff.
1000%. And I loved the drama of it.
Yeah.
But I would always go home early and then hear the stories the next day.
Okay.
And in my freshman year, I watched a lot of people do a lot of drugs and didn't actually do them because I was still so scared. And then I think just watching people do drugs, I was like, I don't need to do that too.
Yeah. What was probably the craziest thing you saw as far as watching people do drugs?
Just like, I don't know if anyone did anything that insane, but just like kind of making a fool of them. Yeah.
Yeah, because I just remember in college, somebody OD'd on Roxy's.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so they came. This was, God, I must have been a sophomore. Because, yeah, I lived off campus junior and senior year, so I was living on campus. And they came, and it was someone we all knew. Like, he came to the student apartment parties and stuff, and they made us all go into the dorm rooms. Like, all of our student apartments, they made us go inside and close them.
Wow.
While they carried them out in a body bag.
That's horrible.
Like, they were like, no one's allowed. And so, obviously, everyone's, like, looking through their people and stuff like that. But that was probably one of the moments where I was like, oh, this can really mess your shit up.
Well, literally a month before I left for college, like, I went to college, like, August 21st. And, like, you know, August 1st, one of my, like, dad's really, like, best friends, like, basically an uncle to me, like, died from an overdose.
Yeah.
So then that was also, like, in the background of my mind all the time of just being like, I don't know what's the thing that's going to make me, like, lose everything.
Yeah.
So then fear's a great way to keep your kids.
Oh, yeah. Fear is a great motivator.
Yeah, yeah.
It's one of the biggest ones used. Just
Exactly.
trying to make people scared. I mean, that's the whole premise behind laws. Like, people are afraid to get arrested and to go to jail, so then they follow the law.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I say it all the time, but after you get arrested 3 or 4 times, you're just kind of like, you don't care anymore. You're kind of like,
Interesting.
whatever,
Yeah.
I've done this.
Yeah.
So then you're actually more apt to continue to break laws.
Yeah,
which
that's
is why
interesting.
it's obviously it's a broken system, and that's one of the reasons.
Yeah.
Because the more you're in it, the more you're like, oh, this is totally fucked.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that I was always away from actually, like, delving into it enough that I was able just to, like, kind of stay a foot away.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So then when did you drink for the first time?
So I drank for the first time my senior year of high school.
Okay.
And that was the story I was talking about when I was like, I've only ever been, like, really drunk one time. And then I was so embarrassed that I was like, never again.
Yeah. So tell that story. What happened? Where are you? Set the whole scene.
Okay, so what you have to understand, if I haven't made it abundantly clear, is that I wasn't very popular in high school. I did a lot of spoken word poetry. I did a lot of improv. It's not a great combo. It's a great combo if you want to, like, feel really deep and introspective, but not if you want friends.
Yeah.
You know. But finally, my junior year, I became friends with this girl who went to a different school than me. And it was like...
She really existed. She just went to a different school.
I know. Everyone in this story went to a different school than me, but I swear it existed. It was real. It happened.
You made it up just to come on the show?
Yeah. Ever since I heard you talk to Eric Walsh,
I was like, I'd have to get on that show. I'm an improv background, so I will make up an entire story.
An entire story, and this is the best I could come up with. But she was really popular, and she was really cool at her school. Mm-hmm. And I, like, couldn't believe that she would take the time to be friends with me. Yeah. I was like, this is community service, and I'm signed right up, like, you know. And I became friends with like some of her friends who went to different schools, and we like did stuff together, and I started dating this one guy, and it was like the first person I had really dated, and I was obsessed with him.
Yeah. As you are.
As
people are.
As people are. He like played soccer. And
Yeah,
I was like, who would have thought me with someone who plays a sport? And
you were out playing soccer the other day. I saw it on the stories.
Oh yeah.
In Central Park.
My first time ever playing soccer.
Yeah, you were with Carlos and the great Eric Walsh.
And the great Eric Walsh, yeah. My number one mentor. Yeah, so we dated, but the entire time we were dating. Also, I know that people who come on this podcast have actual drinking stories. So everything I'm about to say, I want everyone to know is ridiculous. But the entire time we were dating, this girl would be giving me advice. Like, she would be like, oh, like, you shouldn't, like, blow him because then he'll lose all interest in you. Just like, you know.
I love how you whisper that, like we're not talking into microphones.
Well, I'm, you know, prim and proper.
Yeah.
And I was just listening to everything she said because I was like, she's cool.
Yeah.
And then the summer came and he, like, was going away for the summer, so we went on a break. So I thought we were going to get back together. Obviously not. We all come back together, and it's like the start of the school year. This is all the precursor to when I graduate, just so you know. And it's the start of the school year, and she invites us to her, like, Hamptons house because she's, like, popular and rich and cool. And
yeah, we know where you grew up.
Yeah, and
we're all very aware.
Yeah. Serena Woodsen, like, and I was wearing a red bikini.
The fact that I know what that means.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
The show's name is wrong, by the way.
Gossip Girl?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it's a boy the whole time.
Don't spoil it.
Spoiler.
Yeah, and I was like, do you think that, like, our break should end? And he was like, no. And I was devastated, and I was, like, crying.
So the whole time during the summer, you think you are going to get back together?
Yeah, the entire summer. I'm, like, counting down the days.
Yeah. Like an inmate.
Like an inmate, yeah. I'm like, he will return. And
all will be right with the world.
Because I was so upset because I was like, I didn't have sex with him because she had told me not to.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh my God, this is probably my only opportunity ever. And so if I didn't seize it, like, it was never going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, I have to figure out how to get back together with him.
Yeah.
You know, all incredibly rational, sane thoughts. And then he was like, oh, like, I actually don't think we should. I was like, yeah, that's totally cool. Hysterically crying. This girl, I should come up with a different name for her.
Yeah, you should. So, we are back. Through the magic of editing. I didn't even need to say that. Nobody would have known.
No, it's fine. It's good.
So, what happened? So, you're talking about...
Oh, I was saying I have to come up with a fake name.
Yeah. So, you were on a break. You get back. Still on a break. End up staying on a break.
Well, no, we broke up.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You stay on a break.
We stayed on the break. Yeah. And
lifelong break.
Lifelong break. And this girl,
Lily?
Yeah, that is a fake name. It's not her name, but I know we'll go with Lily.
Okay.
This girl, Lily, was like, don't even worry about him.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to forget about him.
Lily's the popular girl from the other school.
She's like, you're not even, like, in a few months, you won't even know who he is. So you see where this is going.
Yeah.
And the school year starts, she starts throwing all these parties and not inviting me to them. I'm like, that's kind of weird. She, like, invites this guy that I've always had a crush on to the party and then Snapchats me a photo with him with the caption, like, we miss you. I'm like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, you weren't even invited.
But I was like, if you missed me, you could have done something about it.
Like inviting me.
Like, invite me to the party. And then she finally invites me to this New Year's Eve party.
Okay.
And I'm 17, and it's my first time ever drinking. And this guy, Seth, keeps handing me what he refers to as truth serum.
Okay.
Which is great. And
do you know what it was by any chance?
It was probably some kind of punch.
Yeah. We used to call it hunch punch. Some people call it jungle juice. There's like a whole bunch of different names for it, but
it was truth serum.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had probably 5 of those.
Mm-hmm.
And I was... That's
a lot.
A lot.
The listeners know because most of my listeners are, initiated when it comes to drinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anytime people are making a juice of any sort, there's a lot of stuff in it.
There's a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And right then, Lily is like, hey, can I talk to you for a sec? And she pulls me into this room. And
dude, what's the feeling you get? Dread? Anxiety?
Dread.
Okay.
Because I think a part of me knew.
Yeah, you knew where it was going.
I knew where it was going. And Liability by Lord was playing, so you can really set yourself there. And I was just standing in this room with her, and she was like, I have to be honest with you. Like, John, we'll use that name.
Okay.
And I have feelings for each other.
Oh, God. Did you punch her right in the dick?
I wish. She was like, John and I have feelings for each other, and I really want to make out with him at midnight, but I don't want to ruin our friendship.
So confused. One, this is the first party that she actually invites you to.
Yes.
And this is like 6 months into school.
Yeah.
And then, well, like 4 months into school. But still, it's the first one she invites you to, even though she's having parties all the time.
Yeah.
2, she invited John to the party as well.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you're thinking, oh, I'm going to make out with John at midnight.
So I thought that I was invited to the party and like, oh, like John will be there.
Yeah.
It's been a few months, like maybe things had changed. The last time I saw John was not at...
Things had changed, but
Things had changed. But I hadn't... So I had seen him at the summer house when he was like, I don't want to get back together with you. But I'm a hard worker and consistent, so like I didn't really process that.
Yeah.
And the last time I saw him, I had written him a letter. Because I was in this class, and this is the worst, but my teacher was like, there's that study that if you write somebody a thank you letter, it like makes you happier if you read it to them. So in my insane 17-year-old mind, I'm like, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write him a letter. And it's going to be a thank you letter for the times that we had. And then I'm going to read it to him. He's going to realize how wrong it was. And then we're going to get back together. And then I'm going to be even happier.
Logic's right there.
The logic's right there. So I text him. I'm like, hey, like, can you meet up for a homework assignment I have to do?
And it was a homework assignment, all right.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And we meet up outside. He's like, oh, yeah, like, I'm with this girl, but I can, like, leave her apartment to come meet you. So, like, obviously he was...
You guys are 17 at the time?
New York.
Yeah, that's true.
So we're sitting on a bench, and I read him aloud the letter. He goes, oh, thanks, and walks away.
Wow.
So that's the last time I had seen him. And then we're at this party, and I'm like, I'm wearing a low-cut top.
Yeah, you are.
It's New Year's Eve.
Yeah,
everybody knows what happens on New Year's Eve. And, like, probably he's not into me, but we'll probably kiss because, like, we've already kissed.
Yeah, and you're wearing the low-cut top.
I'm wearing the low-cut top, and, like, famously, that's all you need to do.
Yeah.
So Abby's...
Who doesn't love some boobies?
Exactly. I already just said her name, but whatever. Lily, not... It's fine.
I'll cut it.
Honestly, I don't care. I just won't say her last name. Her name's Abby.
Okay.
Fine. Who
Cat's
cares?
out of the bag.
Cat's out of the bag. Abby is like, you... Oh, yeah. I have feelings for John. And we want to make out at midnight. And
Are you wasted at this point?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And normally I think I would have been able to, like, hold my composure more.
Mm-hmm.
But I just started...
That's the one good thing about being overly anxious all the time, at least in my experience, is you become very familiar with the feeling of dread and anxiety.
Oh, yeah.
That when things happen, you're just kind of like, yeah, all right. This is my life.
Exactly. And at first I kind of could still hold on to that. So I'm like, you have autonomy over your own body, Abby. You can do whatever you want. Which is an insane thing to say. Like, I don't know. Like,
especially as a 17-year-old.
Yeah, why was that my
drunk
go-to?
at a party.
Yeah.
You have autonomy over your own body. I can't believe I can't believe you pulled that out of the hat.
I know. I'm like pretty. I was impressed. I was like, you've watched a lot of Planned Parenthood commercials or something, because it's obviously different context. But I was like, you have autonomy over your own body. And she was like, I don't want to ruin our friendship. And then I start crying.
Oh.
And I go, what friendship, Abby?
Ooh.
You'll always be popular, and I'll always be me.
Oh, that's like the scenes from Being a Wallflower or something.
So dramatic, but also like I'm burning myself.
Yeah, but you are 100%, but I can also see that in like one of those like 500 Days of Summer, like one of those like, teenage angst kind of independent movies. And that's so your brand. That's so your style.
Yeah.
Abby, you'll always be popular, and I'll always just be me.
Cut to camera.
Yeah. Pan out.
Yeah, pan out.
Wide shot.
Yeah. And she was kind of just like, okay. And then she made out with Addison, and then they ended up dating.
You said his name.
Well, you know what?
I'll cut that out.
Addison and Abby can know that I still care. It's fine. I'm over it, but I'm not clearly.
So what ended up happening the rest of the night for you as now you're inebriated, you're all messed up. Were you staying in a room just crying, or what'd you end up doing?
I don't remember much of the night. I just remember hysterically crying the entire night over Abby and Addison, talking to everyone at the party about it, about how she was a bitch.
So you're just drunk going up to people at her party, being like, fuck this girl.
I knew we were never actually friends. There's no way she'd want to be friends with me. Like, I like reading. She's cool. Was it because of the red bikini?
Yeah.
Like, just all the worst thoughts.
Where do you wake up?
I wake up at this house. Like, I fell asleep at the house party.
Yeah.
And
were you throwing up at all, or?
Oh, I think. Like, I was completely gone. And
so when you wake up in the morning, what's your first thought? Do you remember?
My first thought was like, you handled that really well. And like, you're really mature. And like what you said to Abby, like you really showed her. And then I realized that they fucked up. Then I start going home and I call my older brother, who I'm very close with, is my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I start telling him the story. And as I'm telling him the story and hearing his reaction, which is a lot of laughter, I realized that I didn't burn her. I burned myself.
Yeah.
Because I thought I got her.
So in the moment, you were like, zinger.
I was like, yeah, you'll always be popular and I'll always be me. I don't know how I convinced myself it was a zinger to her, but it was like, you're a sellout.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you're a piece of shit.
So, yeah. And then, yeah, they dated for a really long time.
Really?
For like all of senior year. They went to prom together. I wasn't invited to anything. They like...
Yeah, I would assume you would not be invited to anything after that.
Can you believe they did?
So because you went to different schools, obviously you didn't have to run into them all the time, but did you get any vengeance in any sort of way? Were you thinking about that, or were you just like, all right, whatever, they go to a different school, I don't care?
It composed my entire life. Like, my entire life. Like, I would wake up every morning, fall asleep every night thinking about it. Like,
how you were going to get your vengeance.
Yeah. Or I was just like, one day he's going to realize that this was the biggest mistake of his. But also I was like, all the advice she was giving me was clearly not real. But I think
Isn't that weird? Yeah. It's very Usual Suspects, like that scene at the end where you realize, like, oh, he was the bad guy the whole time. It's very much where, like, something like that happens and then everything kind of snaps into focus and you go, that son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Like, she was telling me not to do all these things because she knew it would push him to break up with me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Wow. And then I met this other guy senior year at a different party, and he had dated Abby. And so then I was like, oh, perfect vengeance.
Yeah.
So then I tried to date him, and he was awful. So she just got another slam dunk on me.
Damn.
I know. Couldn't win. And then, yeah, like, I clearly got over it. But after that, I was like, clearly got over it. But after that, I was like, you have too many things to say to drink truth serum.
Yeah.
That will get you not invited to things ever. And then so I'll have a glass of wine.
Okay. So, but since then, you have not, like,
I haven't gotten drunk.
Drunk?
Drunk. Just a little tipsy.
Yeah.
Because I get sassy.
Yeah.
And I know that. And not sassy in a way that's fun for, like, good
sassy and like Anna's being a bitch.
To herself.
Yeah.
And now we're a little sad for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you showed it right there with the burn.
Yeah, exactly.
So when did you said you started smoking weed in college, and do you still smoke weed now?
I do still smoke weed. I like smoke a little, I drink a little.
Yeah.
But I think that it's still like, I can't pull it off in a way that's convincing.
Yeah. So because you don't come off, it's interesting because your personality type, you're kind of very chill and like laid back and stuff. So you seem almost like a stoner, but you're not.
That is the best compliment I've ever been given.
You seem like you're a big weed head, but you just don't smoke that often.
I don't smoke that often. I really like hanging out with stoners.
Mm-hmm. Why is that? Just the energy that they have?
Yeah, I don't know. I think they're cute.
Yeah, the hacky sack.
Yeah, it's like
crazy hair.
Exactly.
Oh, whatever, man.
Yeah, it's all. I also like I can say things that are like not really deep, but it will land like it's really deep to them.
Yeah.
And it really feeds my ego. And so I'll get high sometimes, but I don't do it often. Like a week ago, I also think people make fun of me when I try to like do drugs.
You?
Me? They're like, oh wow, really?
Yeah.
And so then I'm like, okay, well, like 2 weeks ago, whenever the soccer day
Yeah.
was, I pulled a joint out of my bag to start smoking, and Carly Palestina started laughing for a solid 5 minutes at the thought of me trying to get
That's
high.
hilarious.
And then I was like, okay, so you're right, I shouldn't.
So did you not?
No, Max Fine had a joint,
Oh, okay.
so it all worked out.
Friend of the show,
So
Max
friend-
Fine.
Oh,
and
has he been on
Carly.
it?
Yeah.
And there you go.
So you guys are just a bunch of hoodlums running around New York City, getting in all
Carly
sorts
did
of trouble.
not get high.
No.
No.
You're like, I have to put that on the record. Do you still live at home?
I actually live with my older brother.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where's that at? Oh, well, don't say. But the only reason I was asking so knee jerk was just because in relation to the Upper West Side, I didn't know if you were close to back home.
I see my parents often, but I don't live with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does Abby still live in the city?
Abby lives in LA.
Okay.
She does PR.
Okay.
Enough said.
We don't, yeah.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to know, I was very curious if you still kept tabs on that.
Oh, I've kept tabs on Abby. I have a good butt into this story for after the show, but I can't get people in trouble.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, yeah, I keep tabs on Abby.
Okay.
In
Oh,
a
wow.
chill way. If Abby's listening to this in a really chill, like, I don't care anymore because I'm over it, and like I've dated other people.
Yeah.
You know, kind of way.
You're gonna get a phone call after this.
I hope.
Do you you obviously haven't done any other drugs other than weed, correct?
No.
And does that still what your dad said when you were younger and like everything that you've gone through, that still sits in the back of your mind?
Fear of it?
Yeah.
Oh, 1,000%.
Okay, good. Well, and the reason I find it curious is because I talk about this a lot, but like with my sobriety, I relate it all the time to that movie Hook, where it's an old Robin Williams movie. And in the movie, the further you get away from Neverland, the longer you're away from Neverland, you forget Neverland. And I always talk about like, oh, sobriety is a lot like that, where when you first get in, when I first got sober, it was because my last drunk was so horrific that I was like, I have to get sober. Like this is over.
Right.
And then the longer you're sober, especially if you don't work with other people or new people, you can get further away from that and forget how bad it was in the moment.
Yeah.
So I guess I just find it super fascinating the fact that you didn't have to go through that personally, but being able to see it happen to other people, almost like a transitive property where you were like, oh yeah,
1000%.
that's bad. So you still think about that.
Yeah, well, my uncle is still like really addicted.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is that I was around a lot of people who weren't necessarily like sober from being addicts, but just like actively using in a way that was really awful. And so I think that like it was just and my parents weren't. So it was like, okay, they figured out how to be all right in this way. And like the two sides seemed very clear to me.
Yeah. Do you ever, because you have anxiety and as someone who also suffers from massive amounts of anxiety, do you ever think, not even think, but in your experience, whether it's just smoking a little bit or drinking a little bit, does it ever hit you that point where you're like, oh, this makes me feel good, I should do more of this? And then are you cognizant of that and like, oh no, never mind? Or do you just not have that switch in you?
I've thought that. I got prescribed Ativan for panic attacks. And when I took that, take it, I'm like, oh, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, yeah, because it's like a benzo. Like, obviously it's the best
It's
thing
incredibly
ever.
addictive.
It's incredibly addictive. So like that I don't really do, even though it's prescribed.
Yeah.
And I feel similarly about like I've been prescribed Adderall, but I don't really want to try it because I'm like,
You've never tried it?
no.
That's smart. It's
Because I'm like, I know I would love it. It's like,
Yeah.
because I do like have like attention, whatever, but I'm like, I just know that it like I can so see that path. And so it's like, I'm just not going to.
Yeah. The first time I tried Adderall was in college.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. And it was it was like the night before I had this huge paper due. And I remember, I think I've told this story on the show before, but I remember a friend of mine was like, oh, because I was like, oh, I'm just going to end up failing this class. Like, I don't have time to get this paper done. It's like a 15-page paper, and it was like 8 o'clock at night, and it was due the next morning at like 10.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine, he was like, oh, well, I have some Adderall left over from finals. Do you want some? And I was like, I don't even know what that is. And he gave it to me, and I was
You're like magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was literally in the computer lab in the library, like going so I'd be at this computer and you'd be at that computer and I'd be like, hey, Anna, have you heard of Adderall? Have you ever heard of this Adderall thing? Have you ever tried Adderall? And like I was doing that like from person to person. Like I remember at one point I got sucked down this Facebook rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Where I went on Facebook, but I was like so laser focused and locked in. I just like went down this rabbit hole. And it was like, then hours passed, and I was like, what is happening?
Yeah, I know. I would love Adderall. Like, because it's everything that I like.
Yeah.
Productivity, not having to eat. Like, it
Yeah.
would be the perfect drug. So, yeah, I just, like, I feel like when I get that feeling of, like, oh, I'd really love this, I try to just not do it.
Yeah.
But, like, with smoking, I don't really do it by myself.
Mm-hmm. Which is always good.
I don't, so it's mainly like if I'm at a place and somebody else is smoking.
Yeah.
And I want to feel cool, then I'll do it. But I can't because I cough because I don't do it enough. And then it's all over.
Then you're not cool anymore.
But I don't get the tip wet, so that's good.
That's
You've
super
improved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this was a lot of fun.
This was wonderful.
Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah. Absolutely. Plug everything one more time.
You can follow me on Instagram at Anna Koppelman. And that's really like my only plug.
Okay,
but
perfect.
That's where all my clips are.
Well, thank you everybody so much for listening at Brennan T Comedy. Brennan T Comedy on all social media. And we will talk to y'all next week. That was fun.
That was fun. Thank you for doing it.
Of course. Thank you for coming on.